to have a situation where a substantial minority of the fans are very vocally opposed to the chairman. I mean, look what happened at Blackburn. I think you had Steve Keane kind of every week getting Keane out, and even when they won games, the fans would protest. But it didn't help, did it? It didn't help Blackburn's cause. They went down. I'm not saying it was because of that. I think the Leeds fans are a lot more loyal, actually, in the sense that although they attack Ken Bates, I think they'll always get behind the team. But a new ownership, particularly the one that has a bit of money, will be a fantastic morale boost for the fans and for the players.
In terms of the current squad, who do you feel is the key player for Leeds United?
The person who's impressed me most this season is Austin, and I mean, he's an astonishing player. I mean, he's a typical Leeds player, you know. He is somebody who gives 100%, physically very strong, very motivated, very hungry, very powerful really in midfield, and strong tackler, great on the ball, and an inspiring leader. So to me, he seems to be in the great tradition of these very strong characters who've played for Leeds in the past. So you'll be talking about Billy Bremner and Gordon Strachan, and you know, I see him as the key, Rudolph Austin. But surprisingly, and I'm finding myself saying this and thinking, you know, I've never in a million years be saying this next sentence, but I'm going to say this next sentence. I like El Hadj Diouf. And up until about a year ago, I thought he was a disgrace. He was worse than Joey Barton. He, you know, had spent so many time at nearly every club, you know, getting into trouble, and eventually something might implode here. I've seen him, and I just love the way he plays. I love his attitude. I mean, when he's positive like he's been, I mean, he's such a strong individual, such a great character. I saw him against Everton when Leeds beat Everton. I mean, this is great. I mean, Leeds have a great tradition of beating the top teams in cup competitions or giving them a good game. And once again, we beat Everton in the Capital One Cup. But he was being booed by the Everton fans and all the way through. And when he went to take corners, they'd be screaming at him. And he took, you know, the way he dealt with that was fantastic. You know, he'd wave to them. Rather than let it rattle him, he kind of fed off it. And the Leeds fans love him, and he looks like becoming a kind of cult personality. So I'd say Austin and Diouf are the two. But thirdly, what we do need, and we've got so far, is someone who can score us 20-odd goals a season. And Becchio has started off very well and has scored a lot of goals. I think he's got 8 so far. So if Becchio can keep scoring, he could be the key figure as well.
On the Diouf matter, would you say that's down to the influence of Neil Warnock?
I think so, and you know, I'll give you an example of why that is. When I saw Leeds Oxford recently, this is what we're reduced to, watching Leeds against Oxford. No, I think it was the round before the Leeds Everton match, and what I noticed was that Diouf had just joined Leeds. The fans, some of them were booing him to start with, and once they'd seen that, you know, he's a very good player, was very instrumental in the 3-0 win, the crowd started to change a little bit, and they weren't booing him, and they were, you know, applauding every now and then. Warnock then took him off. We were 3-0 up, took him off after about, I think with 20 minutes to go, and he got a standing ovation. And afterwards I sort of said to him, to Neil, you know, why do you do that? And he said, well, I wanted him to see how the crowd like him. I wanted the crowd to see how he likes them. In other words, this is how a good manager works. He thinks, I'll try and strengthen the bond between fans and the player. I'll bring him off. We're 3-0 up. We don't need him anymore. Rest him, but get him a standing ovation. And from that moment on, the Leeds fans and Diouf have bonded, and that's partly Warnock doing what he does very well. Secondly, Warnock said that this man is not a sewer rat. He's lower than a sewer rat. When I think it was QPR playing against Blackburn, and you thought, well, how on earth can you then buy someone who you've said is lower than a sewer rat? And it shows you that Warnock is someone who puts aside anything, any revulsion that he has towards the person's past, and puts the team first. So Warnock thinks, what's good for the team, and those are two reasons why Warnock is a really, really good manager, and how he has helped Juve integrate into Leeds.
You've seen plenty of Leeds United games. Which was your favourite?
Wow, what a question. Whew. Again, no one's ever asked me that. I'm sure you're aware of this match because it's on YouTube and it's a legendary match. If you're not aware, you should see it. But I was actually there when Leeds beat Southampton 7-0. Don't know if you know about that game. It's the game where Leeds put together 32 passes. It's not just that they kept the ball for all that time and had possession. It's what they did with it, and they taunted the opposition. It was Leeds Southampton First Division. I think it was 1972, and they didn't just pass it around for 32 times. They backheeled it, they flicked it, they did a bit of keepy-uppy. I was there. We won 7-0. Don Revie said, "Go steady. I mean, we don't want to humiliate them." It could have been 14-0. It could have been a record score, and I think that's probably one of the best matches I've ever seen. And what's one more recently that I've seen? Manchester United 0, Leeds United 1. You'll remember that. I mean, Leeds were then in the third division, and we didn't just beat them. I think we outplayed them, and it was an extraordinary thing to see Beckford score that winning goal, and Leeds were back. So I think that's probably, in recent years, that's my favourite match.
You mentioned the film earlier. What did you make of the portrayal of the players and staff from the Damned United?
Well, I think it was a nonsense. I mean, it was the film was good because it had a great performance from Michael Sheen as Brian Clough. It's very different from the book, which is a lot darker. The book, The Damned United, is magnificent. It's one of the best sports books I've ever read. But the film is good, and you very rarely get a good football film anyway. But one thing it fell down on was the portrayal of the Leeds players. They were cartoon characters. They were two-dimensional. They were, Billy Bremner had a sort of curly wig, a sort of "See You, Jimmy" type of thing, smoking cigarettes. Johnny Giles was portrayed by someone who was very tall and he was very small. Brian Clough is supposed to have had Norman Hunter, dive in and chop him down in the training session. It never happened. I just thought it was a crude caricature of Leeds at the time, but it was a very accurate and interesting portrayal of the inner torment that Brian Clough went through.
I was just going to ask you about Don Revie.
Yeah.
Why do you feel that he didn't get the kind of recognition that he arguably deserved?
Yeah. Well, we're in a hotel here, Queen's Hotel, which is the hotel where his players used to stay before games. And you look around here, you can see maybe the ghost of Don Revie. I think you've got a man who was absolutely devoted to his players and his team and his city, or his adopted city, because he's like from your part of the world, the northeast,
Yeah,
Middlesbrough, and like Brian Clough, in fact, So, but he came to Leeds and he adopted it, and we adopted him, and because he's so close to the players and the team, he felt that the outside world was out to get Leeds. It was a bit like there's a conspiracy. Alex Ferguson thinks the same. Mancini will think the same. Wenger. All the great managers think that there's this siege mentality they have where everyone's out to get us, and he would often encourage this animosity. I mean, Leeds were called Dirty Leeds. They still are, strangely. I mean, you're at an age where the old Leeds team that was supposedly dirty, has been long gone. But maybe when you talk about Leeds, you'll say Dirty Leeds. You'll know that that's what they're called. But why are they called that? Because 40 years ago, they once had a team that was very hard, and that's what I'm coming to. Leeds were a hard team. They took no prisoners. I recently interviewed Joe Jordan, better known now, of course, as the assistant to Harry Redknapp. But, you know, Joe was a part of that great Leeds team. He said to me he's never experienced in his whole life the intensity of that. You know, they would be here at the Queen's Hotel, and Don would be keeping them all not under lock and key, but he'd get to bed by 10 o'clock. He'd be, you know, we're at the bar that we've just come from. We didn't have any alcohol, by the way, in case any of your tutors are listening. He would be there making sure they didn't come out of their rooms, come down to the bar. He was very controlling, like Alex Ferguson is, you know, with his players. You didn't mess with him, you didn't argue with him. And yeah, he was loved by all the Leeds players. The ex-Leeds players now still talk about him. They call him the gaffer. But outside of Leeds, we're not so loved. He's not so loved. And there has to be a reason for that. If you talk to people in Leeds about this, very often they'll say, well, you know what? It's just that the rest of the country hates Leeds. I don't know, they're jealous. They've always had it in for us, you know. And I don't think that's true. I don't believe in conspiracies, but I do think that Leeds were one of the hardest, toughest teams around. And I think that their unpopularity was based on that.
How do you see what do you see the future holding for Leeds United in the coming years?
Well, I think they will win the Champions League in 2014 after getting promoted to the Premier League this year. And then, you know, no, I think seriously that Leeds will be back. And I think that this pain that we've been experiencing for 9 years will soon be over. I'm old enough to have lived through a number of cycles with Leeds, and we go through cycles. I mean, for the 1960s and 70s, we were the best team in England, Britain, possibly Europe. Then we were in the second division for 8 years. Then we came back in the 90s, we won the league under Howard Wilkinson. We had O'Leary's Babes who got to the semi-final of the Champions League. And then we went down into the second division, third division, administration, Ken Bates. I think that we're coming into a new phase of the cycle. I feel the spirit of the Leeds team I saw, my last match I saw, it was a pretty bad match. Leeds-Barnsley. We were lucky to win, actually. Barnsley were unlucky to lose. But I saw a spirit in that Leeds team that reminded me of the spirit of the Howard Wilkinson years. I saw Howard Wilkinson's team when they were in the second division, and he got them all playing for each other, and that kind of atmosphere is back. And that's, again, Neil Warnock. He is the key. I just hope, your question earlier, that we get a takeover. I hope that happens. I hope it happens soon. We get the investment, because, you know, the fans, that's probably the last thing to say here. I think Leeds have got possibly the best fans in the country. Even when they were down in the dumps in the third tier in League One, you got 20,000, 30,000 at Elland Road. They followed them to Yeovil Town and places like that. And we've got a passionate fan base. It's very loyal. It gives the team a lift. So, you know, I think the future's bright. And I hope that we're coming to the end of what's been quite a dark era for Leeds.
The final question. You've been to plenty of sporting events.
Yeah.
Which was your favourite?
I'm tempted to say the last one in London, the 2012 Olympics, but to be honest, it's a toss-up between the Sydney Olympics in 2000, which were amazing. It was like a party. I mean, you know what Australia's like. I don't know if you do, but they know how to have a party there. And I'll never forget seeing the underwater, the women's underwater polo team dancing on the tables with their gold medals in a bar in Sydney, and thinking, you know, this is great. And then seeing Cathy Freeman win. I mean, it's not all about Britain and British victories and so on. But the other big thing for me was going to Munich and seeing England beat West Germany. England beating Germany 5-1. That's how old I am. I remember when we used to play West Germany. England beat Germany 5-1 in a World Cup qualifying game. Again, you might be too young to remember that, but I don't know. Do you remember it? And we were watching open mouth, and suddenly I saw the scoreboard. Germany won, England 5, and took a photograph of it. And I thought, I'll never forget this day, because Germany always seemed to get to the last four or the final or win tournaments, and England outplaying Germany in Munich was just astonishing. So it's a toss-up between those two.
Well, thank you so much, Anthony Clavane. Well, I'm Tom Feeney.
I'm Dale Harris.
And I'm Jack Elliott.
Thank you for listening to Blah.
D.
Blah.